breakthrough. I am your breakthrough. Just turn around and watch me come through for you. 'Cause I am your breakthrough. Yes, I am your breakthrough. It's my joy to come and break through for you. Just watch and see. Oh, can't you feel it? I'm coming to your side, and I'm breaking through for you. Everything that's hindered you, everything that stood against you, I'm coming to your side, and I'm gonna break through. 'Cause I am your breakthrough. I am your breakthrough. Everything you need is found in me. Nothing missing, nothing lacking, nothing broken. Everything you need is found in me. Can't you see, can't you see it? So let go and run to me, run to my open arms. 'Cause I'm gonna break through for you. I'm gonna break through and do the impossible things. Every giant must fall down. Every wall must come crashing down that's standing in front of you. 'Cause I am your breakthrough.
If you want to make yourself comfortable, the Lord had instructed me, just so you know, you see this format. The whole idea of Captain Kevin came about right the month before COVID hit, and I didn't know it was going to hit. He told me my last meeting, which was in Michigan, which I believe was in January or February of that year of 2020, I believe it was. I taught on healing. The Lord told me that I would teach on healing there, and that was the last spirit school we did for a while. I did 13 in a row from my studio, and I told the devil, I'll keep doing these every weekend until you let up. And so I did all my spirit schools, if you remember, by myself in the studio, and I had the whole weekend, did every session, and took questions and answers from my students. And that is all because the Lord had instructed me that this was going to happen and that things were not going to turn out right if the church didn't pray. And of course, we know by the results that the church was not active at the time like it should have been. So the whole idea of the way that we have extended out our outreach through the pantry, through the homeschooling, that all came about in a vision that was at night for 5 hours. It was almost all night, and it was Jesus as clear as I can see you. He did not let me talk. I never said a word the full 5 hours. I estimate that because I know when I fell asleep, and I know when I woke up. Okay, during that time, I was given instruction about what we were going to go through, and he gave me signposts along the way. He said, "From now on, you're known as Captain Kevin," and that's how he said. And he said, you watch what happens. He gave me specific things. He said, next month, this was January, next month, he said, you will quadruple your income for the ministry when this happens. And it happened. And it's never stopped. It's never stopped. Okay, that was one thing. He said, you're also going to do homeschooling. He talked about the homeschooling. He also talked about the fact that I was going to be with this kind of approach to the kids and to the adults, that it was going to be more of a level thing where I'm talking, we're having a chat. What I got from all of you by asking, and taking polls and questions, All my books are written off of the students' questions. Just so you know, when I get a subject, I email all the students, and they give me questions they want me to answer. Then I do the books, the study guides, and the spirit schools based off of answering those questions. It takes me a few hours. I get those questions. I research all the scriptures for each question. It takes me several hours to do it. I take 30 or 40 questions at a time until I get to about 100, and then I go ahead and write and release those. Out of that, I started to see that people wanted to be able to, they said, I just wish I could just sit with you and just talk. And I realize that everybody wants to do that, and I want to do that. But if I do that, it just takes, the only thing is that I have to make sure that I follow what the Lord has asked me to do as well. So I thought the best way would to have coffee talk. And that's when the Lord said, you can talk about the things that you're not going to hear in church, but are things that might be happening. So what happened is when I would have like problems arise, like after I came back from heaven, I had beings that would walk through my house. Me and Kathy would have to get up, and these things would be walking right through our house. Now, we owned the house outright. So I told the beings, now, I've been to heaven, been on Sid Roth, and all this stuff is happening. It's kind of like you can't process that. And we had to address this being. I don't know who they were, but they would walk right through our house like a shortcut across through the yard and through our house. And a doctor who actually developed the first Walgreens pharmacy was the owner of the house before us. So we had to tell him that doctor doesn't live here anymore, and that we have the title deed to this house outright. We own it outright. We don't owe any money on it, so it's ours. And that thing stopped walking through the house. Now, I'm not lying to you, and I'll bring Kathy up here if you believe her. But this is what happened. It moved to the upstairs by my office. And we would go up there, and our hair would just stand on end. And I thought, you know what? I wonder how many other people are having things like this happen. See, I was told when I went to school that it was a lack of faith, and that it was the devil is a toothless lion, and he can't do these things to you. And why they would say that, I would look at the teeth marks on them, and I'm like, for a lion that doesn't have any teeth, you look pretty well chewed up. Because their life wasn't represented. So what my thing was it really a lack of faith? And if it was, okay, I own that, and I know that I got to develop, okay? But then I was noticing that these spirits were not what people were saying they were. They were more stubborn and more like you have to put your foot down, and you have to be very aggressive with them. So we would go upstairs, and we would address this thing. We would hear it walking around at night. And so, that's a big problem. Okay, it's like when when you're armed, and you hear something. The first thing I do is reach over to feel if Kathy's there, because I'm not going for my sidearm if she's up. That's her. Okay, but I got to figure it out. Is there somebody in the house? And if she's there, and it's only me and her, and we don't have any pets, then I got a big deal going on, and it's going to involve my sidearm, and I'm going to shoot and then ask questions, because they've already waived all their rights if they're in my house. It doesn't matter who they are, and it might be somebody looking for vanilla ice cream that is our president or something. I might be just wandering around we've had this happen. It just happened recently. Someone was wandering around our house in broad daylight, trying to get in. They were going around, and I'm sitting there looking at it, and I'm like, Kathy, just call the police. And I went for my sidearm, and I just sat there, and I thought, make my day, But the guy was just intoxicated. Then he was lost. Okay, so if I have that stuff happening, and then I have something else happening that's spiritual, where they don't leave any, that you can hear this stuff, I think it's valid. And I think that I shouldn't, as a minister, look down on anybody that has something happen. And I feel like saying that it's a lack of faith that you didn't get healed, or that your money didn't come in. I think that's a wrong answer. Okay, now I know that Jesus said these things, but he was also with them, mentoring them. So I think he had permission to say that because he was literally, they had been assigned to him, he was assigned to them. And, there was that relationship, right? Do you get that? So I feel like he would have, I don't think Jesus wore a suit and tie and spoke King James. And I don't think that he was so proper when he was hanging out with them. I think it was coffee talk. And so the Lord gave me this concept. So that's what we're doing here. I have Dennison and Miranda here. I met them several years ago. They would be in Phoenix, Arizona, where I would have meetings. And so I asked Dennison to be one of the police officers on our meetings. And we got to know each other. And then I eventually hired Miranda here to do some research for me so that I didn't have to spend all the hours that I do on the research. So I kind of lead her in the direction I want to go, and then she can do hours of work and while I'm doing something else. And then with Dennison, of course, Dennison was on a police officer. He's a police officer, and he was also a recruiter and a trainer. So something happened where I thought he was going to come on board with us, and then he had a delay. Where he felt like he was supposed to stay for a little bit. And so he did the training and things like that. And then when it was time, I hired him as well. So I want you to welcome them. They are a precious couple. And anyway, so be thankful. God does send us the people that have the heart of the DNA of Warrior Notes. And they've come alongside to help us. I don't need to change the foundation of Warrior Notes. It's already set. So I just need people to help me. And if people can't come alongside and help me, then they just need to go on their own and do their own thing, But these guys really want to help me because we're doing it. I have all of you students. I wish that more ministers would just come and help me teach the school, but they want to start their own school and all that, and they feel that way. But I can't explain how it grew just in 4 years. This is our 5th year, and it's 42,000. The Lord told me it's going to 250,000. And so Coffee Talk is about really, it's generated from the questions that students have. I have staff members that have had things happen to them that they would get eye rolls from their pastors. But the Lord would send me to them. And Rachel here is one of them. And I'll have Rachel come up here one of these times and talk to you all. Rachel, the Lord, when I met Rachel, it was in a prayer meeting with me and my wife. We're at a prayer meeting. And Rachel was just we would just meet and pray for 2 hours in tongues, no English. So we had a group of 50 to 30 people would just do a circle in the church until they kicked us out. And so they, so we went to somebody's house, and we just really took to Rachel. So the Lord spoke to me one day and said that she had been abducted by one of these alien creatures, and she had an experience when she was a child, and she needs deliverance, she needs healing, and you're to meet with her. So I had Kathy call her and say, can you meet us at the mall, which was the Paradise Valley Mall. And so she met us there, and I just told her, this is what happened to you, this is what they looked like, and I want to tell you that those things are demons. And so Rachel was helped immensely. And then once we took care of the aliens and the spaceships and stuff, then she came in and worked for us. And so she's amazing. Okay, so the same thing with Miranda and Dennison. We started talking, and we realized that there is a lot of unaddressed things that are going on. So you can, to be a good parent, and you could do your outreach, and be parenting outreach. You could do things for people. You could, study, and you could be doing everything right, and you still have these things happening in your life and in your house, and you can't really discern what's really going on because you don't have the tools. So I found if I start talking about these things, the government may get upset, and the witches and the warlocks get upset. And but I also noticed that the demons start to get unsettled as well, because I realized that I'm starting to unmask or unveil. So we want to talk to you in this coffee talk, and I'm going to let Miranda talk a little bit first. She'll have my mic, and then you guys can just banter back and forth, and I'll sit here and drink my coffee or whatever. But the bottom line is this. All the research we've done, all the people that I've personally interviewed, which like all these things like Roswell and all these things, Area 51, a lot, I can name, there's another one which was just happened really near where we lived, where there was an abduction that I wanted to speak about this morning, but it just wasn't appropriate yet. But I'm also attached to that with somebody who was there, is Fire from the Sky, which was happened in Phoenix, which is the Walton story. And this guy was abducted and taken, and my friend was there and watched it happen in the logging crew. Also, he appeared 5 days later. He was missing for 5 days and appeared in a different town. They dropped him off. Now, they all passed their lie detector tests 5 times with the FBI, which you can't mess around that many times unless you're CIA. You're trained in the CIA how to pass a lie detector test. So they can do that, and you can train yourself to do that. But these guys, I know somebody was there. So a lot of these things we talk about, I talk about these ones. There's many. But I talk about these ones because they really hit home. I have friends that have been taken and had these marks on their body, had these things happen. I've seen the results of this. Okay, so the students, when they start asking questions, I realized that if I train ministers to be able to deal with these things right, so you can't make it go away, especially if they have marks on their bodies or they have implants like they do and things like that. I mean, it's too late to argue about these things. What are they and how do we deal with them? My question is, because of this and because of these two, they read a lot and they are understanding the information that's out there. So what I want to talk about is how you discern what the real truth about things are, or what is like a false narrative where they give you a path to go on and they send you off in a certain direction. With people that I know that they're not lying to me, they tell me, okay, well, this is what's really happened, but this is the story, the cover story. Okay, based on people that legitimately are having these things happen, you have to remember that John Mack from Johns Hopkins University, who is completely neutral, but if you read his books, he interviewed over 1,000 people, some of them heads of state. They all have a similar conversation where they have the agenda, what they look like, what they say. That he says there's no way, because he's neutral as a professor, but he said there's no way these people have communicated. We've tracked it down. They've never crossed paths. But why did these things say the same things? They have the same agenda. And he came to a whole bunch of conclusions based on all of these testimonies. So because of that, we started talking and we realized, listen, these are neutral people that don't even believe in this stuff really, but they do now. These professors that are neutral because they're just gathering information. They said that these things are not good. These beings are not good. And they have agenda. And literally documents that my friends have read that were given to them that are classified, they refer what these aliens refer to us as. They refer to us in documents as being containers, which is really a heads up of the demonic origin. So they want to inhabit people to use them. So they're not from another planet. They're from another dimension. Okay, so if the government knows this, which they do, what they do is they use a false narrative that they're from another star system and that they have either seeded the earth, we're an experiment of some sort, when actually they're the hybrid. So they project onto us. So when you hear of like cavemen and all this these pro-magnum, all this stuff that you hear, about the succession of man, what you really find is that the bones they find are this hybrid race. It's reversed. We weren't developed from chimpanzees and things like that. So the narrative that is given by the Smithsonian, they take all the giant bones and they destroy them. Because you can look at the pictures when these things are found by farmers, which I have seen. They put the tracking numbers on them. But when you go to find them, they don't exist. So they destroyed them. But they're 15 foot. And they're in Ohio. They're not over in some Middle Eastern country. They're all over the United States, and there are Hebrew artifacts in their graves with them. And Egyptian. So how did they get here, and why was it related to Hebrew? So I suspect that the days of plague, which are mentioned in the Bible, that's when the continent split. It was all one landmass. Okay, so if you do it this way, I'm just giving you an example of what I've had to do. If I had to piece together a puzzle, but there's a lot of pieces missing. So it's a 1,000-piece puzzle on the box, but you're given like 700. So anyway, I want to talk to you based on the fact that we're not saying that these things aren't happening to you. We're saying we believe you. Okay, but we have to go 3 steps ahead of you and say, listen, don't let the government or the devil dictate what these things are and what their agenda is. Let's listen to people who have interviewed everybody and have gathered all this information. It's the same thing. These beings are telling the same thing. They're telling the same, even from the same star system, Zeta Reticuli. It's a binary star system. Okay, this is not true. But the narrative is they picked up on this and somehow communicated with somebody in the government, just like they did with the Germans, and have become somehow working with the governments, which sounds like a conspiracy, which that whole thing, a conspiracy theory, was invented by the CIA, the actual term. So it's not proving something's happening in your house anymore or anywhere. It's understanding the origin and the operation of these things. And going forward, even if it gets whittled down to 300 people, at least I'll have 300 people that can fight the devil in God's ring and know not to get pulled into the devil's ring, because he tries to get you into his ring, but he can beat you there. I don't go any place where the devil is unless he tells me to. Not the devil, but God. I get sent. In other words, like I have been told to go places and ruin the devil's party. But I only do that at the word of the Lord. Okay, so I want to train you that. So Miranda, you've read a lot. We have to be very discerning. So just go ahead, and then Dennison, you just can jump in anytime because we've read the same stuff.
Well, when Dennison and I were first researching all of these things, we were trying to match it up with the Bible, because we thought, okay, we're reading all of this stuff and it's in secular culture. But we're like, if this is happening, to people, and if this is real, then it has to match up with the Bible in some way, somehow. And so we were trying to make those connections and connect that dot and layer everything and filter everything through the Word of God. And then God brought us Kevin and Kathi and Warrior Notes and helped fit in some of those puzzle pieces that we felt like were missing. And so that's why we were so thankful for the ministry and really gravitated towards it, because you helped connect the spiritual with what was happening physically, and how that everything that is physical starts spiritually first. And so all you're seeing is just a manifestation of what's going on behind the scenes. And so I feel like that is so important to have that as a foundation in the Word, and know that everything that you're reading, you could find reoccurring themes and thread everything. So if you're reading something over here and there's little differences, reading something over here and there's some differences, and you're studying one subject, but there's all these different, avenues or opinions, you can still find through all of them some line of truth or some line of consistency. And so I feel like just for me and my research, that's helped me research, just sticking with that. And then usually if I take, those lines of truth, I can always find an answer in the Bible. So for example, like, all the different things that you talked about this morning with technology and different agencies and all these things that are being used to weaponize, it's all found in the Bible. A lot of people will point it to ancient Egypt and all these different things, but that actually connects to Babylon, which you pointed out. And so when you see certain narratives of connecting religions together for one religion, or bringing the world back together again, they're only trying to redo what was in the beginning. Yeah. And so there's nothing new under the sun. The same agenda that is going on was the agenda in the beginning, and then it was split, and so now they're regrouping and trying to bring it back. So again, you can study all those narratives now, and there may be different opinions on top of it, but you can still trace it back to the beginning in Genesis, and it literally gives you all the answers. If you do the word studies, if you go into the individuals, the characters, all that of the Bible, you can find that line of truth in there, and it totally helps you just see through what's happening in our physical world through the lens of the word. And it's so helpful when you have that, and as you do research, you're just more discerning of what is real and what is not, because you can always trace it back to its original.
Yeah, and I know for me. Yep, hear me? Apologies. Come on. Okay. Well, I know for me, it was, there we go. Apologize. I know for me, I was an 80s kid, so I grew up on E.T. and The Last Starfighter, and, all these great movies that talked about extraterrestrials from another planet. And I remember when we first started our engagement and getting married, and we started to look into all this stuff, we came across books. One thing I would recommend is the Holy Spirit. We were both seeking the Holy Spirit, what is this? We wanted to know truth. And I noticed when you ask him and you what is this? He will open the door. And I remember books would come our way that we weren't even looking for. Bill Cooper's book, Beyond the Pale Horse, the Book of Enoch. We were literally reading all these things that Dr. Kevin and Kathi talk about before we even met them, and that was even more confirmation for Warrior Notes for us. But when I would read these books, I would see, like you said, an underlying theme. Ancient aliens would touch it. They would talk about how it was related to Egypt and all these different pyramids and how all this, this grid that was around our planet. But they would always go off and say they were from another solar system and that we were seeded. And that's the part I could not buy. But when I found Bill Cooper's book, and he talked about the government being involved and Eisenhower, being specifically involved, and talked about the military-industrial complex. We began to research those things, what is this military-industrial complex that we're being warned about, that this is a very dangerous system, and then these other entities that he met with, as Cooper described, and one even looking humanoid, as you referenced. So who were these entities, and who were they meeting with? What were they plotting? And we find out they're exchanging technology for human sacrifice or abduction or experimentation. And the government, Cooper explains, the government got so involved in this that they could no longer come out and say, hey, this is what we're doing. So we had this technology in exchange. So Miranda and I just began to just dig, and more doors get open. And I constantly, the hungrier you get, the information will be provided for you. You can just go deeper and deeper and deeper. And it just, we became these couples that were kind of alienated in our circle, made fun of, ridiculed. I was made fun of at work, especially being a police officer. You're talking about aliens, what is wrong with this cop? But I didn't care. I was bold. I was learning so much. The Spirit was showing me so much, and I was tired of being lied to by the church, because I knew this stuff was real, because as you said, it was in the Bible. I would see these stories about big fruit they're carrying and these giants and these reports, and I was being told that they were lying, that they were falsifying out of fear because they didn't want to enter the promised land. And that didn't sit right with my spirit. I'm like, no, there's something here. This has got to be real. David wasn't exaggerating about Goliath. That dude was big. So we just got hungry, and the doors were open, for all the answers. So.
Yeah, so if you all need help in processing things that are happening, we understand that you got to take everything back to the Word of God, and you have to say, the Word is true, my circumstance is not true. Okay, I feel like there needs to be another couple steps besides just saying that. So just saying, well, the devil's a toothless lion, and the devil's defeated, and Jesus is Lord, and quoting all these mottos and stuff, it doesn't change things in your life that by doing that. What changes things is when you exercise authority and say, listen, and you confront them and you talk to them as they really are. They're a real personality, they're a real entity. And you get away from they're from another planet. Do you understand me? Yep. Okay, if stuff is happening in your house, you can't say, well, it's not happening, and just confess that. And Jesus is Lord. Well, yes, Jesus is Lord, but obviously this entity needs to lessen. He needs some pain to attach himself to the truth through pain. So you create an uncomfortable situation for demonic. You have to. If not, they're going to keep pushing their presence and their identity, their presence and their mission. They're not going to quit until they know that you mean business. Now, churches are not talking like this. But Smith Wigglesworth used to talk like this. He said he was waiting for a train or a bus. I think it was a bus. But, this woman had come and the dog had followed her. Remember that story? Her dog had followed her, a little, ankle biter, I call him, And she said, honey, you got to go home, And Smith's just standing there. And the bus finally came and she was going to go. And she stomped her foot. And I said, go. And the dog took off running, yelping home. And Smith Wigglesworth yelled out of his spirit, that's how you have to do the devil. And John G. Lake and Smith Wigglesworth were really my mentors, even though they didn't live in my time. I have everything. I have every sermon they've ever preached. I have sermons that aren't published that was given to me by family members for John G. Lake. I have many sermons. I haven't even read them all, but I don't want it to be mixed into my writing, so I'm waiting. But I have a huge amount that I want to read. They're from another realm. Okay, so I'm only saying this because I think that cosmetically, people teach just to say they taught you. But I don't feel, the conversation I have, like we were told in class to go ahead and just build a church and the people will come. Right? Is that right? So we were told that at Rhema. And I'm like, no, Jesus said go. So I go and I go and gather in people, then I build the building, I don't like say, God, fill the building. That's what we were told. Build the building, stand in the middle of it, and confess. Am I right? Am I making this up, Pastor Jen? No, you were there in the same classes. Okay. So do you see how this is what I wanted to talk about just in the time remaining, is that really, have we been taught correctly? And did it just work because of the culture at the time and the economy at the time? Okay, so there were times where you could make money just because you woke up. You can go out and make money, and money was flying everywhere. Okay, so when it changes and there's a money squeeze, when the money supply is squeezed, okay, so there's still the same amount of money on earth, it's just in Ukraine. It's in the wrong hands. Like, in other words, there's plenty of money, it's just in the wrong hands. So do you realize that? They're just printing money. You're not allowed to print it, but they can print it, whoever they is. It's not a federal. You ever think about that? It's not federal. It's not a government agency. Did you ever think about that? Why do they call it a federal? Yeah, don't say it though too loud. No, think about it. Like the other three-letter word that had to do with the disease of the week. What is that? If you look it up, it's not a government agency. Okay? All right, so where are you getting your information from? If you're going to deal with something that's going on and you don't know how to process it, and you have had trauma, you've had things happen. Like, I know people that have come to me, and it became something that I had to counsel people with in church as a pastor. Okay, so I have people coming to me and they're like, these things are in our house right now. These gray aliens. I go, well, first of all, they're not aliens, they're demons. They said, but this is what's going on. And after all the research I've done, my jaw dropped. Because these are people that are in our church, Spirit-filled church. This all stuff is happening. And I'm trying to see if there's any holes in what's being said. And it's the same narrative, and there's no holes. These people are crying, and it really happened. And even their little child is there. Okay, but the child, we watched the child. Like, these things are in their house, to where they had to use handwritten notes and hand it to each other, because anything they would say, these things would sabotage it. So they literally had to pass notes because they didn't know how to get rid of these things out of their house, and they go to a Spirit-filled church. And you get an eye roll if you went to the pastor, which doesn't get rid of aliens, the eye roll. Okay, so I sat with them, and they said, the thing of it is that we finally got rid of them, but they would be hiding around corners. You can see them peeking around the corner. And I'm thinking, is this being made up? This is like the American Family, okay? This is not like, something you see on TV. But the little girl, she prayed. She wanted this certain type of salamander as a pet that's very expensive. It was an exotic type thing, but she just had her little vision board. And so this big rainstorm came through Phoenix, and then she's like, honey, this thing's like, I don't know how many $100 for, for this salamander or whatever. Just get her one out of the backyard, and paint it or something, But listen to me. This is what happened. He went out to clean the pool, and there was one in the filter. That very thing after a storm. So that little girl, God was operating in their life, and God was answering her prayers, but yet they were having these entities in their house. Now, you heard about Yonggi Cho in Korea, right? And you understand what happened there, that they just had prayer meetings and cell groups, and their church grew to be 1 million. Do you realize that the whole thing was over the fact that he believed for a bicycle? Do you remember that? You ever read the book, Fourth Dimension? You ought to read it. It's a good book, isn't it? Okay, so he believed for a bicycle. You don't get a bicycle in Korea, at the time. So all these little villages had these little cell groups. And one of the cell groups, the little boy, said, well, I'm going to believe for a cat. Well, you get cat at the restaurant there, The cats don't survive. I know. I'm sorry. Just erase it. Just take an eraser, erase it. Okay, so I kid you not, in the book, you see that those people took the truth that happened through a leader and implemented it. So this kid was believing God for a cat. The village during a storm, watched a cat fall out of the sky and land right in front of this boy. So if you're having things happen to you, if things are opened up, if I were you, I would react in faith, knowing that something is going on in the spirit that's a war, and knowing that God wants to move. So if you have these things happen, and tonight I will pray over you. I will have prayer time with you all. But I want you to know that everything that's being said is not true about the narrative of what happened. These beings are here. They have some sort of hardware that cannot be explained because they're also interdimensional. But we know that even that angel killed 185,000 Assyrian soldiers that one night because they made God mad. Remember that? 185,000 were slain by one angel that doesn't even have a name. So to those soldiers, you can't tell them that sword wasn't sharp. that angel was wielding. But it was an invisible sword. You can't really explain how you got born again. How do you tell a scientist how you got born again? Like, well, tell me the process, They can't monitor you and see what happened inside of you because it was a spiritual thing. It's the same with Jesus. Jesus was physical, but he could walk through walls, walk through crowds. After he died, he was still physical. He came back, right? He had a body, but he could still walk through walls. He could eat food, but the food would go with him. So I tell you that there is truth to all this, but I think that we have been trained to think that it's either one or the other, and that these things are fables. But see, the real world is the world that we cannot see. That's what existed first. God spoke and all these things had manifest. But everything you see, right, Hebrews says, was made out of what was invisible. So how do you explain that? So I think that it's easier to understand that these entities that are interdimensional are harassing people. Just so you know, John Mack also found, and I only take this from hearsay. I didn't actually read this part of it, but this was from Chuck Missler, who did the research. He said that John Mack found that there was no account of any Christian that was walking with God at the time that had an abduction. And if something was happening, if they mentioned the name of Jesus, these aliens would stop the process. They found one person out of the 1,000 that claimed to be a Christian, but she was living with a boyfriend. So she was in sin. I mean, based on the Bible, she was cohabitating without marriage. And they determined that possibly Chuck did, that because of that, these things were allowed to do what they did. Right? So the abductions seem to have an agenda that has to do with gathering genetic material, examinations. The things that are happening are people are appearing to become pregnant, and then somehow the baby goes away. These kind of things, and it gets really hard to stay with this. But trust me, it's coming to that anyway. It's going to come to that, because when you think about what happened before Noah, the days of Noah was this very thing. It had to do with genetics, DNA, hybrid. So it will be that way before Jesus comes back. It says, just like the days of Noah. So we're seeing that now. But Daniel says in chapter 2 that these things, in the statue that he saw, that when it gets to the feet in the clay and the iron, which is the last group of governments on the earth and peoples, is the 10 toes. It's iron and clay. Now, when God formed man, what did he use? Okay, so it says that they tried to mingle with the seed of men, but it would not take. But they don't say who they is, because if you go back through the text, a good journalist would always have that first point of reference. And then after you mention who they are, then you can use the pronoun. But the pronoun is used and it never develops who they are. It never identifies who they are, which is a problem we have today. It's always they, Secret Service says it was they, and then, the FBI says it was they, and, and nobody has any accountability of what happened, You're like, well, who's that on the roof then? And then it's like, well, that's the FBI. So it's like, no, it's the Secret Service. And they have this, so nobody wants to be accountable anymore. And so you see things and you say, well, the bottom line is something happened here and it doesn't look good. And the more you talk, the worse it's getting. And so if these things are happening to you, I believe you. If you've had something happen to you, I believe you. But the only thing is, it doesn't happen to happen again. And, we need to put a stop to this. And a lot of people, they're so hurt and they feel so weird that they don't want to talk about it. So I want to create an atmosphere through these talks where we open it up and people feel more comfortable and coming forward. So we're going to create a forum where you can write in. If you've had these things happen, I want to hear from you. And we're going to develop this into a book or some sort of literature. You can remain anonymous if you want, but we're going to gather this so that people can read it and feel like there are other people. I just want to show that there's other people who have had these things happen, and that I don't want it to become chronic, because I feel in the last days, you see all these creatures that come out of the abyss. What if those are part of this experimentation? What if they are part of a hybrid something that's going on? And I know it is. So if you start to see things change in the next couple years, and you start to see behavior changes, you start to see people being modified and becoming less human, because that's happening. Because I know, just so you know, I know people that have taken into their body what it takes to alter their DNA to become super soldiers. This is not hearsay. These guys are superhuman. And now they're paying the price for that, because they're retired and they're having a lot of problems. There are people that are among us that have been experimented with, that are in these meetings. There's one in this meeting now. So when you sit and talk to these people, you can't explain why their eyes are all black. They don't have any pupils. You can't explain, like, how I could be talking to a pastor and confronting him about sin, and his eyes turn to snake eyes as I'm talking to him. My pastor, nobody that you would know, so don't even try. And I had to cast it out of him in a restaurant. So from now on, if stuff is happening to you, we're going to deal with it appropriately. And stop feeling bad about it. Let's deal with it. Amen? Because as a pastor, I feel like I'm a pastor, even though I don't pastor, but I am pastoring. But I have that heart that, like, I can't just tell you, because, see, I feel like things have been cosmetic. So if you don't get healed, I just say, well, you didn't have any faith. It takes all the responsibility off of me. But what if I'm supposed to be like Jesus and say, well, I'll pray for you again? Well, you can't pray for a person again, because if they didn't get it first time, it's like you didn't receive it the first time, you need to build your faith. No, Jesus didn't say that. He laid hands on people again. Right? The guy that saw trees, they were human beings. He said they're like trees. It's like, well, you get another dose, So Jesus didn't let that affect him. Okay, so he talked to people. He worked with people. And I feel like that's the way the body of Christ should be. As a fivefold minister, I feel like I should be able to work with you until you receive. And I don't think it should be like, you should tell people it should be instant. It should be, I'm so drunk in the spirit right now. It should be like right on the spot. I feel like it takes time for some things to happen. So when I lay hands on people, I know they're healed, but it might take time. And I've seen people over months just be completely healed. It's happened at that moment, but it had to work through. And we're all built to be in discovery mode. We love the journey. We love, like when I'm at work, I want to get from point A to point B without thunderstorms and all that. So that's my mentality. If I need to go somewhere, if I just need to go there, I don't care about the journey. But for us as human beings, part of the discovery is being able to ask God questions and getting answers, or interacting with people. But if you are traumatized, you can't interact, right? You've been hurt, right? And I feel like this, I just want to do this and introduce you to them, because you're going to see them more often. That I want it to get to where you feel more comfortable sharing what's happened, so we can help you. Now, I've seen things and heard things, and I still can't file it in some place, I've had people that I know are not lying to me have told me things, and I know it happened, but it's like it's really hard to believe. But I know these people aren't lying to me, and they're very credible. You know, they wouldn't lie. They wouldn't make up stuff. They're not that kind of, you have to like pull on them just to get them to talk about it. But, you know, the ones that have been briefed about these things that are happening say that these things are the ones that actually they made us out of themselves, that we're actually like the result of these beings, and that we're the hybrids. And I'm thinking, those ugly things, they have nothing to do with God or me. That's why they hide in those spacecraft. You think that's the image of God? Does it say a man's the image of God? So we have a representation of God. They do not. And you can see these kind of things, right? So that is, did you have anything else you want to share? You have anything else?
You want me to talk about the dispatching calls or anything like that?
Yes, please, because Dennison, I asked him to share about scenario training, because this will help you to discern, because, you know, things that you're told, they can get you killed. They can get you off. So you got to be careful when people say stuff. You got to check it out and make sure that it's right, especially when they're talking about the Bible. Like this, the thing about faith, it really is a setup for failure. You know, God is working with you, performing miracles and signs and wonders. He's working with you. He's not telling you believe or don't believe. And good luck, you know. So anyway.
Yeah. So one of the things that you wanted me to mention, we were talking about being a police officer, being dispatched to calls for service. One of the things the dispatcher does is take down all the information, what's going on, whether it's a family fight or a subject with a gun or whatever the call may be. So a lot of these calls, you got multiple witnesses calling in. You have the victim sometimes calling in, so you're getting all this different information, and the dispatcher has to discern like what's going on. So as you're going to the call, this stuff is popping up on your screen, and you're trying to drive and do everything else at the same time while you're reading the computer. But you're getting details that don't often fit what you're going into. And so what I learned in my 21 years career is I would listen to what the dispatcher was saying as she was updating me. I would look at the call and read the comments, but I didn't take it for face value. Because when I got there, 9 times out of 10, and this is not knocking any dispatchers listening or watching, it was never the way that it was dispatched to me. And so if I went in there with a preconceived notion as to what I am going into, it was a danger to myself or others, and I didn't have the appropriate response. And that's where I saw a lot of officers get in trouble with, is because they looked at the comments and they were so gunned into the comments that it literally affected their perception and what they had to experience once they got on the call.
See, so I asked them to share this because, you know, it could be a trap that you're led into. So police officers can be led into a trap where it's a false narrative that's literally a setup. And so you get there and it's nothing like you. And that's why when I talk to police officers, and I was just armed security, I was never a police officer, but I had enough exposure to understand some things, even though they called me a rent-a-cop. You know, I was like a security guard, you know. But, you know, I'll take it, you know, that's fine, you know. And the thing that I asked the police officers about is say they would give me examples like, okay, I get called to an accident scene, and they said we would have 8 witnesses. So 8 people witnessed this thing, okay, supposedly. They would say out of the 8, there was only a couple that were actually really accurate. There were things involved with a lot of the reports and the eyewitnesses that involved things that weren't even at the scene. And they said a lot of things, it was really hard to, when you read the reports, some of the reports, to really determine what really happened. Even though there were 8 people that saw it, so supposedly. So I wanted to say that because going forward, the idea is that Satan's design that is merged with governments is that deception is going to be at an all-time high. Okay, just remember that. If you get anything out of this conversation is that you can't take things at face value. You have to be prayerful and you have to be discerning and on your game spiritually so that you know when to just stay home and eat in, or, you know, the decisions you make should be based on your spirit and not on your head from now on, right? Okay. So one of the examples, and we're going to get, if the nurses would come up, we're going to do that now. And but one thing I want to tell you is I did a research, just like the Maui incident. Okay, I did the research and I found that anything blue did not burn. Okay, so there were people that had tarps on their houses because of damage. You know, they put a blue tarp on, and like in hurricanes in New Orleans, you got 2 or 3. So you got different colored tarps, and sometimes you have multiple colored tarps because they haven't even got from the last hurricane the claim, and now they got a new damage done, and they put a different colored tarp on it. Okay, so if you notice that when they run the blue spectrum of lasers over blue, that it doesn't burn it, but it'll burn all the other colors. So I saw the film where there was blue beams coming from the sky, and things were igniting and burning, and it was melting cars. It was melting things. Okay, so I realized that was a weapon, because Maui's my favorite place, and these things don't happen. Okay, so the narrative is that, you know, the fire started. Well, how did it start? Well, you don't know. And why was it skipping nice hotels, but it was hitting all these little people's private property? And now I heard that all the Hollywood stars are buying up all these properties now, right? Oh, really? Okay, so what's going on here? Well, those locals wouldn't leave. You know, if you listen to what happened, is they were like, my dad came over on a canoe and you know, to Maui, you know, and this is our house, this is our property. And you start to think, but if you see some video about this, and then understand the spectrum of light and lasers, you can see that this is what really happened. But it's bizarre. But see, I know that they have these things on airplanes and their weapons. I know that. You don't know about it, but I do. And if you investigate, you can know too. Okay, so what you're being told a lot of times is not true. And I feel like in the coming days, it's to mislead you into a trap, to create a scenario that's really not happening. So you can start skipping the disease of the week. You know, like, have you seen the Amish? I gotta quit, but I get it. Have you seen the Amish interview? They asked the Amish community, you know, how did you fare during COVID? And they said, none of us got it because we don't have TVs. No, that's what they said. Have you ever seen that interview? Okay. Thank you all. Give them a hand. Okay.
Perfect. Watch me do